Hello everyone, my name is Adriana Peretta Morca, and I'm an RN on a medical surgical floor at a small community hospital just outside of Los Angeles. And with the help of my nursing supervisor, infection control director, the charge nurses, and staff nurses, a continuing education project on peripherally inserted central line care and infection prevention was chosen. The project consisted of a course presentation outline to help keep the nurses in attendance on track, a pre-test on Picc line care and infection prevention to assess the nurse's current knowledge on the subject, handouts of the current hospital policy and procedure were given, and of course a presentation consisting of current hospital policy procedure, the current evidence-based care, the Center for Disease Control's 2011's current suggestions for Picc line care, and the hospital manufacturer's How to Care for Nurses Guide on the most used Piccs. The presentation was then followed by a post-test to evaluate the nurse's new knowledge and the effectiveness of the presentation. The goal of this project was to have all the nurses on the unit following the same hospital protocol and also to be up to date with the most current evidence-based practice on care and infection prevention of Picc lines. Some objectives for this project included that 100% of the staff on the unit nursing staff participating on the unit in the presentation, and that they all score 100% on the post-test by the end of the presentation, and also that the nurses would be able to state 3 or so evidence-based facts about Picc line care that they hadn't known before. Okay, and the timeline for meeting these objectives was to first consult with my nursing supervisor and the infection control director on the appropriate content for the presentation, and then met with the charge nurses to plan the appropriate dates for the presentation and evaluation of the final outcomes. I also met with some of the nurses who had taken the had participated in the presentation, the first one, and asked them if there was anything else that I could have mentioned in the presentation, or if there was anything I could have changed to make it better. So those were good. I got some good feedback from them. Okay, and why Picc line care? Well, Picc line care was chosen because my floor is made up of about I'd say about half of them now are new grads. We went through a big new hire stage, and I think the veteran nurses on the floor felt like they weren't as up to date on the care of Picc lines, and they were having conflicting information from each other. And then actually the DNV came to survey us because we're accredited through the DMV, not JACO, and one of the questions that they asked was about Picc line care, and so they got some conflicting information, and so then Picc lines have been a big topic on our floor since then, and so they wanted to know more information about Picc lines. Okay, and also the nursing supervisor this said that this would be a great project to work on for the nursing staff. Okay, some of the anticipated benefits, of course, were that the nurses would benefit through education and add to the current knowledge and skill of Picc lines to the nurse. And this would increase their confidence in their skill, and patients would benefit by having a more knowledgeable nurse, less incidents of Picc line infection, and therefore the hospital would benefit by reducing the costs and having more satisfied patients. Also, being able to reduce incidents of any infection is always good for the hospital. Some anticipated problems were that I knew it was going to be difficult to get 100% participation from all of the staff nurses to be present and view the presentation and take the post-test. So I made a handout of the presentation and the pre and post test. Those were made available to the nurses, and then they could either turn them into me or to the nursing supervisor. Okay, and resources. A great deal of resources were needed for this project to be successful, I think. The time needed to produce this project was estimated at about just over 36 hours, and this includes meeting with the advisory staff, producing the handout materials, producing the presentation itself, conducting the presentation, evaluating the outcomes with the advisory staff. The personnel support was needed from the staff RNs and the charge nurses to come together for the presentation, the advising panel to come together for the meetings. So it took a lot of us working together for this presentation. And in terms of money, the itemized budget there with the estimated cost of the total presentation being at about just over $1,000, and $900 of those dollars being for the person who implemented the project. Some of the materials that were developed were, of course, the PowerPoint presentation itself, the pre-test, the post-test, to evaluate the goals. Okay, and research and evidence-based information were used to compile the information for the presentation, and that included the hospital's current protocol on Picc line care and infection prevention. The CDC's 2011 guidelines were probably used the most because they also contain the most evidence-based and current up-to-date knowledge on Picc line infection prevention. And also the hospital manufacturer of the Picc lines, they have their how to care for guide for that's provided to the nurses. So we compiled that information together for the presentation. Okay, and of course the goal of this project was to have all of the RNs on the medical surgical unit be up to date with the current Picc line protocol, and by creating the post-test from the presentation, I was able to assess their knowledge, and in fact, the goal was met. All of the nurses who attended the presentation scored 100% of the post-test, and I would say the goal was partially met in that there are still 2 RNs on the floor who have not taken the post-test, but I mean, it's only a matter of time before they are able to turn those into me, and then this presentation will have been 100% successful. I think they really benefited from the information, and we're really grateful to have some extra knowledge on the subject. And this completes my presentation. Thank you.